$1,000,000. Da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na. And it might even be two. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this one, we need to talk about $1 million sales. Another one for the year of 2024. Fantastic Four #1 in a CGC 9.6, the highest graded copy there is for that book. Goes on sale next week, and already it has passed the $1 million threshold. And so in this video, I wanted to do a little bit of a conversation about that book. Maybe we can have a little bit of a prediction of what that thing might actually sell for. I'm certainly going to do coverage of it next week, but ultimately I wanted to talk about $1 million sales here in the year of 2024. And what would seemingly be a down year for comic books, maybe surprisingly, has had more $1 million sales this calendar year than any of which we've had in the previous 5. So what does that mean for the comic book market? Does nobody care about funny books anymore and values? Well, apparently at the high end, they still really do. But of course, before I get into the video, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I appreciate it. Helps support the channel doing those things. But let us get into this video here today. Now, here is the book at hand that we are talking about. Fantastic Four #1 in a CGC 9.6. As you guys can see, current bid, $1 million, with a buyer's premium of actually $1.2 million. I mean, we are at that point where we're talking about $25,000 increment bids for a book like this. As you guys can see, the highest graded copy of the first appearance of the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family. Certainly, I think a good time to sell this book with all the anticipation going into next year, where we're going to get the Fantastic Four movie. You got the CGC old label right there, which, by the way, you know, smart on this seller to not actually have this book reholdered into the new CGC label, because anytime you have an old CGC label and you want to get the new one on it, there is always the risk that it could lower the grade of your book. Now, when I actually look at this copy, it is a nice copy. You know, there's not too damage on this book overall. It didn't have the ASM1 treatment where we saw the healthy spine tick in the corner. Although it does have just a little bit of color breaking going on right there in the low right corner, which probably makes this a true 9.6. Definitely not a crack and press candidate. Certainly not one that you would want to reholder and risk the chance of it, you know, being lowered to something like a 9.4 grade. But there you see it. Next week, this book will be up for sale. Heritage already, you know, advertising the fact that it has currently hit $1 million. And it's pretty impressive, you know, that we are already there. A lot of people thinking that this book could go as high as $2 million. Now, the record sale for, I believe, a 9.4 copy or a 9.2, which we'll talk about this later on in the video, has in fact gone for $1.5 million. It wouldn't totally surprise me if this book also only sells for $1.5 million. Still has a little bit of a way to go, but ultimately we'll have to see. Of course, there's a lot of great, you know, platinum heritage auction books going on in that sale that we have next week. I'll definitely be doing the live streams and the coverage of it, and it'll be a lot of fun. But I want to spend the rest of this video talking about $1 million sales, you know, where we are in the current state of the market. Tomorrow, I will be putting out my update for the comic book index video, so you guys can look forward to that one. But to me, I think it's really surprising, because here we are in the comic book market. We've talked about, you know, the values all kind of hemorrhaging, you know, money here and there, sales going lower and lower. People have anecdotally been saying that, you know, it's harder to sell some of, you know, their graded books, or harder to sell, you know, books in this calendar year than it was in previous years. Although what I do think is very interesting is that if you look at the heritage auction sales, which is just, you know, one auction house sample size, and I think you can relate this to some of the other ones out there, like the Comic Connects and the Comic Links and stuff, there have been more $1 million sales in this calendar year than all the other years where we had crazy comic book boom prices, which I find really, really fascinating. Although, you know, in fairness, we've also had a lot of, you know, books that have quote unquote underperformed or sold for a lot less. You know, there was a Detective 27 comics that we covered and sold for like $600,000 less than the previous sale. So I think that this year in particular has been really polarizing. It's been a wild year in terms of, big swings to the highs, big swings to the lows. But if we look at it, this is the same year that we had the not only record sale for Action Comics, but the record sale for a comic book ever, where we had the Action Comics #1 in an 8.5, the Kansas City pedigree copy, which of course is totally thematic for the first appearance of Superman, selling for $6 million. The world record for a comic book. We had this 7.0 copy of Superman #1 that sold for $2.3 million. We had this All-Star Comics 8, first appearance of Wonder Woman joining the $1 Million Club for 1.5 earlier in the year. And then everyone, remembers this one, ASM #1, the 9.8 white pages with a, little flesh wound down in the lower left corner that still sold for $1.3 million. And this Flash Showcase #4 in the 9.6 that almost went for $1 million, just stopping shy at the $900,000 price point. But, with this Fantastic Four sale that's about to happen, and there's still, many months left in the year, although I don't think that there's any other books within this, next coming up auction that are going to hit the $1 million threshold. I mean, that puts, 5 comic books in 2024 just on Heritage alone in the $1 Million Club. Where if we were to go to Heritage last year, in the year of 2023, well, what do we see? We see one right here, Detective Comics 27, which, of course, as we established, took the haircut this year, sell for $1.7 million. And then we also had this Batman #1, the Saving Superman copy, that sold for $1.1 million. And then we had this Captain America #1 in 9.2 that only went for $810, which a lot of people felt was a disappointing sale for this book. We had the we had the AF-15 in a 9.2 that went for $810. A lot of people also thought that was a disappointing sale for that book. So in 2023, you only had $2 million sales, which 2023 I think was definitely a big down year as far as the high end was concerned. Back in 2022, you had the Action Comics Rocket copy sell for $3 million. You had this Captain America 9.4 set the record for itself at $3 million. You had this 9.4 All-Star Comics 8. Excuse me, I misspoke. It also set a $1 million sale back in 2022. And then you have this one right here, the current record, Fantastic Four #1 in a 9.2 with white pages. Of course, the one we're talking about is a 9.6. This one sold for 1.5. And then you had the Detective Comics 4.5 sell for 1.1. So to me, 2022 was the craziest year that also had $5 million sales. Back in 2021, you had $1, $2, $3 million sales. And for a lot of people, 2021 was the height of the comic book boom. Then in 2020, you had $1 million sale. In 2019, you also had $1 million sale. And then in 2018, you actually didn't have a $1 million sale for a comic book. The highest one that sold that year for Heritage was Action Comics 1 in a CGC 4.0 that sold for $573,000. I think that book, had it been sold a couple of years later, would definitely be twice of the value for what it sold for. But what do you guys make of this? How do you feel about where we are as far as the high-end comic book sales are concerned? I realize that the high end of comic sales doesn't actually, tell us much about, the overall state of, the comic book collector, the comic book industry, the business, the secondary market, and all that. High end obviously is a very particular type of buyer that is, picking up a book like this. But at the same time, it does say something. It certainly says something that here in the year of 2024, you've had more $1 million sales than any ever in history with comic books, now that I think about it. Because although this year tied with 2022 for Heritage, with the $1 million sales, if you look at the other auction houses like Comic Link and Comic Connect and all of those other ones, they too have had some sales that would go in this $1 million club. So I find that kind of fascinating, again, in a year where it seems like comic book values are down, and in a lot of ways they are, there's still a lot of big boys that have been moving out there in the comic book market. A lot of cool books coming up in this Heritage auction. I will certainly have a live stream to go along with it. Those are always fun to do that type of coverage. So be sure to tune in and join me next week when this goes live, probably on Thursday. Anyways, that's all I have for this one. Fantastic Four #1, highest grade copy on the census, breaking the $1 million threshold, certainly on its way to potentially set a world record for that book. Can it do it? If it doesn't sell for 1.5, would that be concerning, disappointing? I mean, the 9.2 sold for 1.5. So in theory, you would think that this book is at least going to have to sell for 1.7, maybe 2 million. Tomorrow, update on the comic book index. Where are we? Are we still going down in values? I will let you guys know. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about this book in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.